Welcome to UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk with Dr. Jenna Blasi. I'm Dr. Jenna. I spent years crafting ways to help women thrive, and I want to help you do the same. On this podcast, we dive deep into health at every level, focusing on the mind, the body, and the spirit. This is where real conversations meet transformational wellness. We'll be talking about all the things that truly matter, from nutrition and fitness to lifestyle, mindset, and personal development. Plus, the real deal on managing stress and navigating menopause. So if you're ready to elevate your health journey with authentic, transformative insights, you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome back to UPLEVEL. This is episode 6-7. If you know, you know. Shout out to my daughter, Avina. Today, we're going to talk about weight loss versus metabolic health and why they are not the same goal nor the same thing. All right. So most people start their health journey, or many people start their health journey with the goal to lose weight. And that's understandable because the scale has been used for decades as a primary marker of health. But here's the problem. Weight loss and metabolic health are not the same goal. You can lose weight and become metabolically less healthy. And you can improve metabolic health without dramatic shifts on the scale. So today I want to unpack why those two things are different, why focusing on the scale can actually backfire, and what markers of health we should be paying attention to instead. Now, this episode ties in and I hope helps ground the GLP-1 discussion that we started last week. And I have to say, there's always so many things I feel like I can talk about in these podcasts. And frequently when I get done, I'm like, oh my gosh, I didn't say this, or oh my gosh, I said this and I didn't explain it in the right way. For example, well, one thing that comes to my mind is I was listening to a clip that got posted on social media from my appetite episode saying that, it's our appetite feels like it's changed, but it's our like window of tolerance, so to speak. I don't remember what words I used, that have actually changed. But our appetite does also change. And I hope I said that in the episode. So as we go along, I may remember things that I didn't say or did say or wanted to say. And I want to preface this whole thing again with, I'm not your doctor. Metabolic health is complex. There are many, many hormones that go into a balanced metabolic health picture. And we've talked about cortisol. We've talked about insulin. We're going to talk about that a little bit today. Hormones, progesterone, other hormones, progesterone, estrogen, testosterone, also your leptin, your ghrelin. There are the GLP-1s are hormone. They act like hormone signaling in the body. They're peptides. And so I'm going to refer to them as peptides, or did in the last episode, but they're also like hormones. And so I don't always say things right, meaning I don't always say them exactly the way I would like to. And it's a nuanced conversation. So I do want to stress, I'm not your doctor. I do recommend you working with someone. I'm not saying, hey, everybody should be on these and go out and get on them. There are many reasons why any of us choose to do any numbers of interventions. And I hope I've stressed the baseline interventions of eating well, moving your body, strength training, managing your stress, addressing your gut, etc. And this is where the discussion around the real goal isn't weight loss. Yes, we want to feel good in our bodies. We want to be confident. And when our waists start to widen, when our waists start to thicken, when we start gaining weight, I don't remember what the average amount like per decade, but it's like roughly a pound a year and then 10 pounds a decade. I did not look that up. Full disclosure, did not look that up before I got on here. So that might be way off. But if we don't really consciously and intentionally address our metabolic health, then we continue to pack on the pounds. And it's not just about weight. That weight affects our joints. That weight affects how we feel. That weight, that fat is inflammatory, and it shows that we're insulin resistant. Whether or not it's showing up on labs, which for most of the people I see, it is showing up on labs because we always check insulin and we see that it is 2, 3, sometimes 4 times the optimal amount that you want your insulin. We are insulin resistant as we get older. So the real goal is metabolic resilience. Now, the reason this scale became the primary metric is that historically, weight became the easiest measurable metric. We do want to measure. What we measure, we can manage, right? And so doctors would quickly measure your height, your weight, your BMI. But metabolism is far more complex than a single number. And weight alone doesn't tell us your body composition, doesn't tell us your insulin sensitivity, your inflammation, your muscle mass, your metabolic flexibility. So two people can weigh the exact same amount and have very different metabolic health. And this is why I like to shift the conversation from weight loss to body composition. Now, those of you that know me and have been listening to me for a while know that I don't even use the term weight loss. I say releasing weight, shedding weight. And that's that mindset piece that I got from Bob Proctor. What we lose, our subconscious will go back and find. So there's a mental component, there's a mindset component. There's also the fact that the more that we gain and lose weight, the more disrupted our hormone and brain signaling becomes. And this is why it's so common for people to regain the weight. Is there a mindset component? Is there a lifestyle component? Absolutely. Is there an actual hormone signaling component? Absolutely. And it's broken. Oh, I don't use that word broken. I don't like to, but the signaling is off, right? And so that's where, just to slip in, tie back into the GLP-1 conversation, especially a small or a microdose of a GLP can go in and reestablish that circuit, that signal of balance for the appetite, for satisfaction, for satiety, etc. So shifting from just releasing weight or losing weight to body composition is really what matters. Body composition matters more than weight, because you've heard the term skinny fat. So specifically, muscle mass, fat distribution, and visceral versus subcutaneous fat. So we know that we want to preserve our muscles as we get older. Fat distribution, prior to menopause, we distribute fat more in the hips, the thighs, and the glutes, which is a quote unquote healthier place or safer place to distribute it. After menopause, it starts to go to the midsection, which dramatically increases our risk for cardiovascular events, which is why our cardiovascular risk rate increases and starts to match men. Men tend to be higher when we're younger, and after menopause, we start to match that picture. And that's that visceral fat that starts coming on. So muscle is one of the most important drivers of metabolic health. All right. It influences your glucose or blood sugar regulation, your insulin sensitivity, your metabolic rate, and physical resilience with aging. So if someone loses weight, but also loses significant muscle, then their long-term metabolic health may actually worsen. And this is one reason why resistance training and adequate protein matters so much. I've heard some say it's non-negotiable. I would say moving our bodies 100% is non-negotiable, but if you've got to be increasing strength. Resistance training, strength training is really important. And then getting adequate protein. It affects your energy. It affects everything. So as we shift the conversation, how can we look at markers of metabolic health that go beyond the scale? Instead of only watching the scale, we can pay attention to other signals. So some examples include energy stability. Are you experiencing energy crashes through the day? We can look at appetite regulation, right? I talked about that in the second episode of this month. Do you feel constant urgency around food, or does hunger feel more predictable? Now, when we have urgency around food, when we have changing sugar cravings, eating cravings, this is tied to our hormones. This is tied to our phase of life. This can be tied to stress. And I will tell you that the more metabolically dysfunctional your body is, the more erratic your hormones, your cravings, your gut-brain signaling around satiety and hunger and fullness will be. And so we can also look at mood stability, which this ties into. As I said, when I was feeling really out of control around food, and I understand that my out of control is pretty balanced compared to a lot of people, but for me, it didn't feel good. And that affected my mood stability. And it affected the free rent in my mind of constantly, and this is true for most women. There's a constant dialogue in the head around food, what to eat, when to eat it, when not to eat. So mood stability can be tied into that piece, but it's also tied into blood sugar. And blood sugar volatility can influence mood swings and irritability. This is another thing the GLP-1s do. They not only help regulate the appetite. Remember, we're not looking to suppress. If you start suppressing your appetite, you won't get enough protein in. You won't get enough calories in, and you won't have the energy stability and you'll lose muscle. And that's not a good idea. They also help with blood sugar, with insulin signaling and sensitivity. And then my next point is inflammation and pain. GLP-1s help with all of these things. So they are an amazing tool. Again, I'm particularly partial to the microdose. I believe less is more. And I believe, as I said last time, like I was trained initially as a homeopath where it's minimal dose for maximum effect. And what I'm discovering from the people I'm studying with the GLP-1s, that is also true for these. With different types of people needing different degrees of intervention, let's say. These staples need to be there for everybody. But again, broader picture, markers of metabolic health, energy stability, which I have seen and found the GLP-1s do help with, appetite regulation, mood stability, and inflammation and pain. So most people, as they improve their metabolic health, start to notice improvements in joint pain, headaches, general inflammation as their metabolic health improves. Now, of course, releasing weight affects all these as well. When we release weight, typically our energy is better. Although I have talked to many people who lost a lot of weight and their energy didn't improve. They didn't feel better. Their mood maybe felt better because they felt like they looked a little better, but their energy didn't improve. Now that could be from low energy availability, that could be from muscle loss and protein deficiency, it can be from a lot of pieces. We are complex human organisms, and what affects one thing affects several things. And so that's why as a physician, I take the approach of no boxes left unchecked. So instead of just focusing on the scale, I want you to look at these pieces: your energy, your appetite, your mood, your inflammation, your pain, your sleep as well. Metabolic regulation often improves sleep patterns. I have been dialing in a lot of these pieces for a very long time. And as I mentioned back in, I think it was around November, I don't have the date, I started adding in extra hormone support. And then roughly towards like end of January, beginning of February, I started microdosing tirzepatide. I plan on adding testosterone microdose very soon here after I get my next set of labs and get a new baseline. But what I can tell you is I have watched over the last, since November, my sleep is improving. My sleep numbers, my deep sleep, my REM sleep, I have my Aura ring, my overall resilience. I've watched those things for years. Again, just one marker, right? We don't put all our eggs in one basket, so to speak. And then when I noticed I was in like what felt like a depleted state, and I took those 3 weeks off around the holidays, then when I came back to like, okay, I'm ready to move my body, I'm doing it in a different way right now, right? As I said, I'm doing it in a different way. I've been doing TRX workouts. It's been wonderful. So we have seasons, we have phases. If you've been going, I went hard last year. I went hard on the weights. I went hard on HIIT. I went hard on the cardio, like for most of the year. So looking back, I'm not actually surprised. And then there was a lot going on in my business. There was a lot going on in my family. All of those pieces, it's really no wonder come holiday season in December when I took a couple weeks off, my body was like, we're just resting. And now I'm in a different phase. And I won't be in it forever, but honoring where you are. So when you honor where you are and you support your body, so through this phase, I'm honoring where I am. I've shifted how I'm doing certain things. I'm listening to my body. I'm not just forcing exercise. I was exercising before all of last year, probably 6 days a week, occasionally 5, rarely 4. Now I'm doing 3 most days. Most weeks, I mean. And I aim to walk in between. I aim to do rebounding and other things in between, but I'm really listening to my body. And some days my body's like, nope, you're going to go really low key today. So when you look at all of these pieces, not just weight, okay, when you look at all of these pieces, your energy, your blood sugar, your appetite, your inflammation, your pain, your sleep, then you start moving the needle and moving the markers on, do I need to adjust my exercise? Do I need to adjust my diet? Do I need to adjust my stress management? Do I need to adjust my fill in the blank of any of the pillars? And then that exogenous hormone piece or that exogenous peptide hormone signaling piece can be an amazing adjunctive tool, but they're just tools. They're not Band-Aids. They are not cover-ups, and they are not solutions in and of themselves with nothing else being addressed. So looking at different markers, how often do we feel like nothing has changed, but actually everything has changed? All right. So another thing that I hear very often, especially in women, from women in midlife, it is something that sounds like, I'm doing the same things I've always done, but my body is responding differently. Or the same things that always worked for me don't work anymore. All right. Scale might not be moving. You feel like the inflammation is getting worse when we start this process. But if you're in this process, okay, so let's back up. I mixed up two scenarios in my head. When people come to me, they often say, I'm doing the things I've always done, but my body's responding differently. Then we start addressing all of these pillars, and not all at the same time necessarily, right? We're not looking to overwhelm you. I always say, like, pick one, start dialing it in, dial in your protein or dial in your movement if you're not doing it. But you may not see the scale move right away, but look deeper. There are other shifts happening. Maybe your strength is improving. Maybe your sleep is better. Maybe your blood sugar regulation is improving. Those are signs of metabolic progress, even if the scale hasn't changed dramatically. And honestly, we don't want the scale to change dramatically. When the scale changes too dramatically, meaning more than a pound or two a week, it's going to come back, and it may likely be muscle. This is the long haul. So whether you have 10 or 15 to shed or 40, 50 plus to shed, slow and steady wins the race. And so this is one reason why focusing only on weight can miss important markers of health. It's interesting when I talk to people and they're like, well, in a month, I've only, released 5 pounds. And I'm like, that's great. We don't want a lot more than that. How are these other pieces? Is your energy better? Do you have more brain clarity? Has your joint pain and inflammation gone, etc.? Because when we chase weight, this can backfire. All right. So when weight loss becomes the only goal, people often adopt strategies that actually compromise their metabolic health. So examples include severe caloric restriction, over-exercising, under-fueling protein, and ignoring recovery and sleep. So in the short term, the scale may drop, but over time, we're seeing muscle loss, which we don't want. We're seeing hormonal disruption. We're seeing metabolic slowdown. We're seeing rebound weight gain. The body interprets this aggressive restriction as a metabolic threat. And the more you gain weight and lose weight and gain weight, and the more the hormones are going to be amok, the more the signaling gets out of tune. And so you want to really do this right. And right may mean slower. And I know that can be hard in the beginning. And it's funny, I saw somebody on social media, I think it was the Sober Bodybuilder, love that guy. And he said, you can do easy now and it'll be harder later, or you can do a little harder now and it'll be easier later. It's kind of like that same concept of we can invest now in our health. And I'm not just talking financially, I'm talking time in the gym and preparing food and, energy effort, or we pay later. So we don't want our body to be in threat mode. We want it to feel safe, and we want to preserve our muscle and start regulating our hormones so we can actually improve our metabolism. And this is where long-term outcomes are where I like to shift people to focus versus short-term weight loss. When we look at long-term health outcomes, the markers that matter most are muscle preservation. I feel like I sound like a broken record, right? I say this all the time, but I cannot stress it enough. Even, I want to say, I told you all I'm not lifting as heavy as I was. I'm doing these TRX workouts. They're intense, by the way. I mean, they are full body intense. Today I was doing these lunges with one foot in the straps, holding a weight. And so I had to balance and keep my foot in the straps, and my core was engaged, and I was holding the weight with my arms while I was doing the legs. And anyway, but it's the progression. So I'm always making sure that no matter what I'm doing, my strength is increasing, my resilience and endurance are increasing. So when I'm doing like heavy weightlifting, I have the app that's tracking the weights, and I log all my weights, and every exercise, because I'll do certain programs. And so I do programs where there's maybe, it doesn't matter. Anyway, I make sure that when I'm doing a similar workout or the same workout as the week before, if I've done that exercise, then I make sure I've increased either my weight or my reps or both. So then I'm always progressing. And with the TRX, a lot of what I'm doing with the TRX doesn't have weight. And so I'm making sure I'm doing more reps, that my strength isn't improving. And I make notes. And so, the app will say, like, the app will say, it sounds like I said the apple says, the app will say, this is a 5 out of 10. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was like a 10 out of 10 for me. And so I'll mark that down. And then when I do it the following week, because like I said, I have I have an A, B, and C. This is Haley Heppens Fitness. Love her. I do A, B, and C, and then we do each program for 3 weeks. So I have the same A exercise workout, B workout, C workout that progresses every week. And so I make sure that I'm progressing, and then I'll put notes and go, oh my gosh, it wasn't a 10 out of 10. Or I'll say, oh, I had to rest, to get those however many reps in, I had to rest in between. And then the following week, I'm able to add one and maybe not rest, or maybe I'm able to do it without rest. Like, I'm always looking for progress in strength. And especially now that I'm microdosing a GLP-1, I want to make sure that I'm eating. I want to make sure that I'm fueling. I want to make sure I'm getting enough protein, and I want to make sure I'm not losing any strength. So I have a scale that does body composition. Now, look, the scales are not 100% accurate. They're widely variable, but we can look for trends over time. And that's what I look for. And then we have the practical trends over time, which is, am I feeling more energized and less wiped out after a workout? Am I progressing in the workout? Am I feeling strong? So those are just pieces to look at. And if you are on a GLP-1 or you do decide to work with a practitioner, make sure you're not suppressing your appetite. That's not the goal. And being as small as possible. Oh my gosh, I don't know what is happening in Hollywood, but we seem to have gone back to like looking like death being what's in. It really concerns me. These are not healthy looking bodies that are, being out there in the public, at least in my opinion, both as a person, but as a doctor. And again, I don't mean this in a shame way. It's just, we have to be aware, what are our goals? And the goal is not to get back to some skinny mini. It's to be strong, be metabolically healthy, have amazing hormone balance and insulin sensitivity, which is going to give you such longevity and reduce so many issues moving forward. Okay. So when we look at, going back to these markers, muscle preservation, insulin sensitivity, cardiovascular health, inflammatory load, we don't want to just add years to our life. We want to add life to our years, right? I just talked to a woman today. She wants to be able to get up and down off the floor with her grandkids. Many can get down, they can't get back up, right? Or for all my patients who ride horses, get on the horse, get off the horse safely. So these factors that I just listed, they influence mobility with aging. They influence your chronic disease risk. They influence your cognitive health. I see a lot of people, they want to prevent Alzheimer's. I have a whole separate podcast on that. We should link it in the show notes on cognitive health and how to set yourself up. And it's all these same things. These metabolic pieces affect your cognitive health and your longevity. And the scale alone cannot capture those. The scale is weighing us against gravity. Like, we have to stop putting so much weight, no pun intended, maybe pun intended, on the scale. So let's redefine success. What does success actually look like? So tying it back to what I said in the beginning, success might include stable energy through the day. That has been a big game changer for me since starting. And it's funny, I'll probably get hate for being on a microdose of tirzepatide. I know a lot of my colleagues have. I know there's a lot of shame-based talk out there if we don't understand why we're doing something. But I will tell you, my energy stabilized throughout the day. Even just like my appetite has regulated in a really, really healthy way. So redefining success. And again, this is not about I'm continuing the conversation on the GLP-1s, but that is just a tool. All right. I do not recommend starting for 95% of people, right? There's always exceptions. Everybody's an individual. You are all individuals. You deserve to be treated as an individual. But 95% of people, I wouldn't start on a GLP-1. I wouldn't start on hormones until we lay these foundations. That's why I switched what I do in my practice. I stopped doing fee for service because people would just kind of go back to their lives. I wanted to hold them in a bubble, resetting their gut, clearing their detox pathways, building the right nutrition plan, building their exercise, getting the hormone, like the basis for hormone regulation, the foundations in place. And then these added tools can really take everything to the next level. But again, there's always exceptions. And some people need certain tools just to be able to function, to be able to do those things. And this is where you deserve to be with someone. Find a practitioner who listens, who has time to spend with you, who looks at your labs as an individual and takes all of who you are and your family history and your medical history. I spend a lot of time with people on their goals. Where are you at now? Where do you want to be? What are your goals? And that helps develop like what your life plan will look like. So, but your own markers for yourself. Success can include stable energy through the day, predictable hunger signals, stronger muscles and improved strength, improved sleep, improved metabolic labs, feeling more resilient physically and mentally. And your weight may change, but the goal is a healthier metabolic environment. Okay, not just a smaller body, not just a number on a scale. And I will tell you, since doing all of these things, and you all know, like I walk my talk. I've walked my talk for years. It's partially why I'm really excellent at what I do, because I made it through med school. I made it through residency, taking care of my metabolic health, taking care of my stress, taking care of my muscles, taking care of my relationships with my husband and the people I love. And so now at this phase of life, adding in these extra tools feels really, really valuable. But it's, I didn't do them for years. I'm roughly 6 years post-menopause, and I'm just adding in these extra tools, mostly because I felt great until I didn't. And I see so many people in my practice, post-menopausal women in particular, or perimenopausal, who are like, I have always felt great, had good energy, slept well, and now everything has gone, to crap. And so I can tell you that dialing in with these foundations always, and adding these extra tools for me, my energy is more, all those things I just listed have shifted, all of them. And I watch all of those regularly. So I have more stable energy through the day. I have predictable hunger signals now. I'm always working on stronger muscles and improved strength, even though I'm doing it a little bit differently right now. My sleep has improved. My aura ring is like, I just gained a year and a half in you're this much younger that I haven't seen in probably a year. That was very exciting because I watched that. You're a little younger, you're older, it hasn't been so great this last year. And now it's like the best it's been in a really long time. My sleep is better. It's still a little disrupted. We have dogs and cats and they chase each other and, and sometimes on my own, it's still disrupted, but it's very much improved. As far as improved metabolic labs, I'm getting my labs done next week. Actually, by the time this airs, I will be getting my labs done. And I'm super excited because, as I told you all, they were not great for the first time really ever, honestly. So I'm looking for that improved insulin sensitivity and all of those other metabolic markers, inflammation, et cetera. I didn't have a lot of inflammation going on, honestly, but I did have some other things. And then feeling more resilient physically and mentally. And I have absolutely felt that way as well, which has affected my mood. So I'm just sharing my personal story. I could share lots of patient stories. Everybody's an individual, but I want you to know you absolutely can feel better. You absolutely can dial these pieces in, but find the right people to work with, because when we start playing around with this, like I'm even working with colleagues, right? When we start playing around with this on our own, we need outside eyes, we need outside expertise. And I know that's hard to find. But you will. Just keep that vision and keep looking for it. And stop watching the scale all the time. Okay, I had a patient once who, for years, she weighed herself daily, and that scale determined her mood. It determined whether she felt like she was doing well or she was failing. And eventually she decided to focus on a few different markers, right? Strength in the gym, energy through the day, how well she slept, how stable her hunger signals felt, what her mood looked like. And then her relationship with health actually became much calmer and more sustainable. And over time, her body composition improved, even though she wasn't chasing the scale, and probably because she wasn't chasing the scale, because she relaxed more. And healing happens when we relax, by the way, and weight is a protective mechanism. So if you relax and you give yourself some love and you do all the things will start to shift. So the scale can measure weight, but it cannot measure resilience, it cannot measure strength, and it cannot measure metabolic stability. All right? Scale tells us how much the body weighs. It does not tell us how the body is working. And we certainly know plenty of people that probably don't weigh much who are not a picture of health. All right. So, but if we have excess weight, we really, that is a sign. I can't think of anybody I've seen who has excess weight, even if it's just like the addition of visceral fat, whose labs are not off. It is a sign of your metabolism going in the wrong direction. So I'm all about body positivity. I'm all about loving ourselves, but these metabolic markers matter. And when you have excess weight, particularly in your midsection, you're not metabolically optimized. All right. So reframing just the general weight loss conversation, tying it back into last week, because GLP-1 medications are often discussed through the lens of weight loss. But if we shift the conversation towards metabolic health, the questions become more interesting. So instead of asking, how much weight can I lose? How much weight can someone lose? We start asking, is your metabolic regulation improving? Is your muscle being preserved? Is inflammation decreasing? Are you feeling stronger and more stable? And tying back to the GLP-1 conversation, GLP-1 medications done right? So in the right doses, not getting overdosed, they actually help your metabolic regulation. They help your metabolic regulation. They actually are longevity peptides, just like muscle is a longevity organ. They help your longevity. They help restore your gut. We worry so much about the gut symptoms. They actually improve the gut microbiome. They improve your metabolic regulation. They do actually help preserve your muscle if you're getting enough protein and strength training. Everyone's so worried about losing muscle. There's nothing inherent in them that's going to cause you to lose muscle. It's not eating enough protein and not strength training. And when you do those things, they can actually help preserve your muscle. They help decrease inflammation. They are anti-inflammatory. So again, it's not just about those, but because we just talked about it last week, and I know I didn't talk about all the things because there's too many things to talk about. I'm also tying those back in. So ask yourself this question, okay, to close. Ask yourself this question. If the scale wasn't the primary measure of success, what signals from your body would you start paying attention to? And then you can start looking at, oh, my energy levels have stabilized through the day. Or ask yourself, has my energy stabilized through the day? Do I not need afternoon naps? Do I not need that afternoon coffee every day anymore? I hear that all the time from my patients. That's one of the biggest things. Oh my gosh, I don't need my afternoon coffee, nor do I need a nap in the afternoon. Do your hunger signals feel predictable? Are you getting stronger over time? Is your sleep restorative? These are the questions you can start to ask. Metabolic health is less about chasing a number and more about building a physiology that supports you over time, right? Adds life to your years. Because ultimately, health is not defined by a number on a scale. Just like I said, it's not defined by one lab. It's not defined by a few numbers on your Oura ring. It's not defined by any one thing. It's defined by a whole myriad of things in terms of how well the body regulates energy, stress, repair, and recovery over time. If you're working out really hard, but you can't recover, that's an issue. If you're working out really hard and you're constantly getting injuries and joint pain, that's an issue. All right. So let's start looking at metabolic health through a broader lens. Let's regulate our energy. Let's regulate our stress. Let's repair and recover over time through all of these pillars that I talk about all the time. I just got distracted because I finally looked at the screen and my hair was doing something weird that I didn't like, but the episode's over. So there you go. Now you all have to go watch it. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, watch it on YouTube and please subscribe, share this with a friend. But I'm really excited about just changing this conversation so that we all be healthier and the best versions of ourselves. All right. You deserve to thrive. You absolutely can thrive. And there are foundations of health. There are additional tools, the additional tools without the foundations, when it's not appropriate to use them. Let me rephrase that. When it's not appropriate to use the tools, like when it's too early, right? And there's just too much chaos and we have to get the foundations in. At best, they just don't work. At worst, they start just adding to the chaos. So let's lay these foundations, do the things. And for those of you doing all the things already, then these extra tools can be a real game changer. And for those of you struggling to do the things, they can also be a game changer. They're really, these foundations matter for everyone, and these extra tools are appropriate for a pretty large number of people. Doesn't mean everybody. I know I got super excited about them last week. Doesn't mean everyone. But I just love having amazing tools in my toolbox. But it always comes back to the unsexy basics. And then sometimes you just need a little extra support to make it a little easier. One of my mentors, he used to say, we want to come in the back door and then it's easier for them. That was with homeopathy. Come in the back door and then it's easier for them to make the changes. I think sometimes the hormone support, the GLP, other types of support can help us come in the back door, if you will, to make it easier for you to do the things that need to be done. But it's individualized. So hope you found this helpful. I will see you next week for our last week of March. Thank you everybody so much. Have a great day. Thank you for joining me on this episode of UPLEVEL, Real Health, Real Talk. I hope today's conversation inspired you to take the next step in your health journey, one that nourishes not just your body, but your mind and spirit as well. Don't forget to subscribe so you never miss an episode. And if you found value in today's episode, please leave a review. Until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and keep thriving. And remember, true wellness is a journey, and you are on the right path.